Caitlin Clark didn't just attend Milan Fashion Week, she owned the moment. Front row at PRADA. Not tucked in as a random celebrity invite, but positioned like someone who belongs in that space. Forbes recently listed her as the 4th most powerful woman in sports. And if you take team owners out of the equation, she jumps to number 1. Sportico crowned her the highest paid player in the entire WNBA. And now, on one of the biggest fashion stages in the world, she's being showcased alongside Olympic icons like Eileen Gu. That's not luck, that's leverage. And while Clark is building a global brand, Angel Reese is in a very different spot. Reports suggest her Reebok signature shoes are struggling to move, ending up heavily discounted. The contrast is impossible to ignore. One athlete is expanding into luxury fashion circles. The other is fighting to maintain momentum in the retail market. That visual alone paints a clear picture of where things stand today. So what actually went down in Milan? Why is this about more than just a basketball player sitting courtside at a runway show? And why are insiders saying Reese isn't exactly thrilled watching all of this unfold? Let's break down the real story, because this moment says a lot about power, influence, and who's truly shifting the culture right now. And I want to hear from you. Are you backing Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Imagine this for a second. Caitlin Clark, the same player who lit up college basketball at Iowa and now runs the floor for the Indiana Fever. You're sitting front and center at PRADA's Fall/Winter 2026 show in Milan, and somehow it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel forced. It looks right, like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. Here's what most people don't understand about a PRADA front row. You can't buy your way into it. You don't just get invited. A PRADA is one of the most calculated, brand protective fashion houses on the planet. Every single seat is intentional. They're not just arranging chairs, they're making a statement about influence. The room Clark stepped into, Carey Mulligan, Letitia Wright, Charli D'Amelio, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife. That's the level. So when a WNBA player is placed in that front row, not in the back, not off to the side, but right in the spotlight, on cameras flashing from every angle, that means something. She wasn't there as an athlete filling space. She was there as a power figure. The real question is simple. Why her? Look at the full picture. Clark is pulling in 8 figures in endorsements. Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, State Farm. She's not just a rookie guard. She's the face of the league. Every major brand in America understands the moment she represents. PRADA clearly does too. Her presence alone brought global coverage. Sports outlets, plus other fashion magazines, pop culture pages, the kind of buzz brands spend millions trying to engineer. PRADA generated it simply by placing her in the right chair. And this wasn't some last-minute collaboration. The connection goes back to 2024 when Clark wore PRADA on draft night. At the time, she noted it was the first time the brand had dressed a basketball player, male or female, for that stage. That wasn't random, that was the beginning of something. Milan was just the escalation. No, outside the Fondazione Prada venue, Clark arrived in a beige striped cropped polo, cream trousers, a deep brown wool trench, chocolate Prada kitten heels, gold hoops, and a sleek black leather bag. Marie Claire described the look as sporty chic, and honestly, that fits perfectly. Athletic edge, polished finish, confident without screaming for attention, very on brand. And then there was the seating arrangement. Right beside her, Eileen Gu, 6-time Olympic medalist, Stanford student, an ambassador for Louis Vuitton, Prada, and Gucci. That pairing wasn't accidental. Prada deliberately framed 2 of the most marketable women in global sports in the same shot, and the internet caught it instantly. One viral comment summed it up. This one, Caitlin taking over Fashion Week too. From breaking WNBA records to front row at Prada, the global reach is unreal. That's the energy. Within hours, the images were everywhere. Fashion media, sports networks, entertainment blogs. Hey, it wasn't just a basketball player at a runway show, it was a signal. Caitlin Clark isn't just expanding her game, she's expanding her territory. Caitlin Clark didn't simply attend that runway show, she became the main storyline. That's a completely different level of impact. Most athletes pop up at Fashion Week, snap a few photos, and maybe get a brief mention in a recap article. Clark showed up and somehow turned the entire event into her moment, and here's where the real separation happens. She's not out there chasing fashion deals or trying to force her way into elite circles. The invitations are coming to her, that front row wasn't random, and the people seated around her made that crystal clear. The company you keep at an event like that says everything about your status. While Milan was buzzing, Angel Reese was back in the States watching the clips circulate online. At the same time, her Reebok signature shoes reportedly struggled to gain traction at retail. We'll get back to that contrast in a minute, but first, let's talk about the woman seated next to Clark, because that detail matters more than people realize. Eileen Gu isn't some athlete who dabbles in modeling for extra exposure. She's arguably one of the most dominant figures in winter sports today. At the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, she captured gold in big air, gold in halfpipe, and silver in slopestyle. 3 medals in a single games. That's not just impressive. And that's historic territory, and she followed it up at the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics with another 3-medal performance, bringing her total to 6 Olympic medals in freestyle skiing, all while balancing academics and a high-profile modeling career. Yes, academics. Gu is a Stanford University student actively enrolled, juggling coursework with global competitions, runway appearances, and major endorsement deals. We're talking Louis Vuitton, Prada, Gucci, Tiffany & Company. Victoria's Secret. That's not athlete trying fashion. That's a legitimate force inside the luxury world. Brands at that level don't hand out contracts for fun. They partner with people who elevate their image and expand their reach, which is exactly why Prada placed Gu right next to Clark. 2 globally marketable athletes, 2 women dominating different sports, 1 frame. That visual wasn't accidental. It sent a message to every editor, executive, and brand watching. This isn't a novelty. These are elite figures who belong in this space. Now imagine how that lands for Angel Reese. Reese has worked hard to build a crossover identity. Fashion forward, culturally relevant, bigger than just basketball. And suddenly, Clark is seated beside an Olympic gold medalist who also walks international runways and studies at one of the world's most prestigious universities. That's a different kind of comparison, because you can't manufacture that resume. You can't declare yourself part of that circle. Rooms like that operate on invitation only. And Gu's presence added credibility to Clark's moment. It elevated it beyond WNBA star attends fashion show. It placed Clark in a broader conversation among the most accomplished female athletes on the planet across all sports. And that's the shift. This wasn't about glamour, it was about positioning. It signaled that Clark isn't just influencing basketball. She's entering a global tier where sports, culture, fashion, and power all intersect. That pairing put them in a completely different lane. Seeing Caitlin Clark and Eileen Gu side by side created something rare, a moment that both fashion insiders and hardcore sports analysts wanted to break down at the same time. That crossover appeal almost never overlaps, and from a branding perspective, that kind of dual attention is gold. Now, to be fair, Eileen Gu's story hasn't been without controversy. She was born and raised in the United States and developed her skills largely within the American training system. But on the Olympic stage, she chose to compete for China. That decision sparked heavy debate. Critics argued that she benefited from US coaching and infrastructure, only to represent another country in global competition. It became a loud conversation, and it didn't fade quietly. But in Milan, none of that debate mattered in the moment. What people saw was simple. 2 women operating at the peak of their respective worlds, seated together at one of the most exclusive fashion events on earth. Prada's front row, an Olympic gold medalist on one side, the highest paid player in the WNBA on the other. Gu's resume, 6 Olympic medals, Stanford student, ambassador for brands like Louis Vuitton and Prada, is exactly the kind of elite company that elevates Clark's image into another category. Suddenly, this isn't just about basketball. Clark is stepping into a global tier that very few athletes in any sport ever truly reach. And that Milan appearance didn't happen by coincidence. It's the payoff of an endorsement empire that's quietly redefining what's possible for female athletes. Let's look at the numbers. Sportico recently named Clark the highest paid player in the WNBA. Not top rookie, not top guard. The highest paid player in the entire league. And the majority of that income isn't from her contract with the Indiana Fever. It's coming from corporate partnerships that see her as a long-term centerpiece. Start with Nike. Reports have her deal valued at $28 million over 8 years, the largest endorsement agreement ever signed by a WNBA player. And this isn't a surface-level partnership. Nike isn't slapping her logo on a generic sneaker. They're building a full signature line around her, including her own shoe. That signals commitment. Nike reserves signature models for athletes they believe can anchor the brand for years. Then there's Wilson Sporting Goods. Clark has her own signature collection with them. And here's the historic part. She's the first female athlete Wilson has built a signature line around since Michael Jordan. Yes, that Michael Jordan. The last time Wilson made that kind of move, it was for him. That comparison isn't marketing hype. It's a clear statement about how they value her impact. Gatorade joined the list as well, reportedly signing her to what's being described as a record-setting deal for a female athlete within the company. Gatorade's roster has included some of the biggest legends in sports history. For Clark's agreement to set a new internal benchmark says everything about the confidence they have in her reach. So that's Nike, Wilson, Gatorade, all treating her like a franchise-level investment. And then there's State Farm. Anna Clark became the first female athlete the company has ever signed as an endorser, not just their first WNBA player, their first woman athlete, period. State Farm has existed since 1922, nearly a century of business, and Clark is the one who broke that barrier. When you stack all of that together, Milan starts to make perfect sense. That front row seat wasn't a random fashion invite. It was the visible result of brands across industries placing massive bets on Caitlin Clark and positioning her as more than just a basketball star. For more than a century in business, State Farm had never signed a female athlete as an endorser until Caitlin Clark. That's not a small footnote. That's a major shift for a company of that size and history, and they didn't just add her name to a list. They built full-scale campaigns around her. So step back and look at the pattern. Nike, on Wilson, Gatorade, State Farm. These aren't minor partnerships. Each of these brands is positioning Clark as a focal point, not a side piece. Corporations at that level don't operate on vibes. They operate on metrics, sales data, audience growth, conversion rates. They know exactly who is turning attention into revenue. And right now, every indicator is pointing in the same direction. Forbes ranked Clark 4th among the most powerful women in sports worldwide. But here's the key detail. Remove team owners from that ranking, and she rises to number 1 among active athletes. Think about how fast that happened, especially in a league that just a few years ago struggled to break into mainstream conversation. The shift has been dramatic. The WNBA recently secured an 11-year, $2.2 billion media rights deal, roughly quadrupling the value of its previous agreement. On 4 times the number, analysts covering the league have directly linked that spike to the surge in ratings, attendance, and overall attention that followed Clark's arrival. ESPN has also reported that league revenues have climbed to the point where revenue sharing with players is now being triggered, something that wasn't even on the table before. That's not coincidence. That's impact. This isn't about one athlete getting lucky with endorsements. It's a coordinated, multi-brand investment centered around someone who consistently delivers on the court, in interviews, and in the way she carries herself publicly. The companies that signed her are seeing results. The ones that didn't, they're watching closely. Meanwhile, while Clark was seated front row in Milan, another headline was forming back home. And it involved a discount sticker. Angel Reese signed with Reebok, launched a signature shoe, received real marketing support, and had a legitimate rollout moment. On paper, it looked promising. Reebok has been working to re-establish itself in basketball, and partnering with a high-profile WNBA player with a strong social media presence seemed strategic. Big announcement, strong online buzz, high visibility. But months later, the shoes reportedly haven't sold through. Instead of selling out and restocking, they've been spotted marked down, sitting in clearance sections rather than flying off shelves. At any point in a product cycle, that's concerning. This early on, it's especially troubling. Now, compare that with projections for Clark's upcoming Nike signature shoe. Based purely on demand for products tied to her name, analysts expect immediate sellouts, potentially within minutes of release. That contrast isn't about branding slogans. It's about consumer behavior. It's about who fans are actually willing to spend money on. There are also reports that Reebok may be quietly scaling back marketing efforts around Reese. No public statements, just a noticeable reduction in push. And when brands start lowering the volume, it usually means their internal numbers didn't match expectations. Because here's the reality, when a company slows down promotion, it's rarely random, it's data driven. And that data may be suggesting something uncomfortable, that while Reese generates headlines and social media debate, attention doesn't always translate into purchases. She's constantly part of the conversation, but conversation alone doesn't guarantee sales. Being the center of online conversation is one thing, converting that noise into actual revenue is something else entirely. Sponsors understand that distinction better than anyone. Viral moments don't clear inventory, purchases do. That's where the difference shows up. Caitlin Clark's image isn't built on controversy or constant back and forth. It's grounded in production, steadiness, and the way she carries herself within a team environment. She consistently praises Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham. When she dealt with injury, she addressed it openly and moved forward without theatrics. For brands, that's ideal. It's steady, it's dependable, it's low drama with high upside. With Clark, companies know what they're attaching their name to, and it tends to elevate their image rather than complicate it. The tension between Angel Reese and Clark stretches back to the 2023 NCAA championship game when LSU defeated Iowa. In the final moments, Reese famously hit the "you can't see me" gesture toward Clark, a clip that instantly took over social media. Reese leaned into that spotlight, and since then, the dynamic has lingered. Over time, there's been a pattern: subtle comments, social posts, and moments that seem to orbit around whatever milestone Clark hits next. When Clark announced her LPGA partnership, Reese posted, "I can play golf too." Short, seemingly playful, but fans quickly interpreted it as something more layered, frustration masked as humor, and that cycle keeps repeating. Clark reaches a new level, and a reaction follows. It's become part of the broader storyline, and not necessarily one that strengthens Reese's standing with major sponsors observing from a distance. Brands pay attention to everything: public behavior, fan response, most importantly, sales performance. Right now, those signals appear to be aligning more with Clark than anyone else. Nike especially isn't being subtle about where it stands. What they're building with Clark goes far beyond stamping her name on a sneaker. True signature lines at Nike are rare. Historically, that list has been dominated by names like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. That's the company she's now being grouped with in terms of structural investment. This isn't symbolic, it's strategic. Nike isn't just endorsing her, they're positioning her as a long-term pillar in the future of women's basketball, and they're expanding the vision even further. Reports suggest her partnership will stretch into golf, with appearances tied to LPGA events and a broader identity as a dual sport ambassador. That's not a standard athlete contract, that's a lifestyle blueprint. It signals that Nike sees crossover potential, someone who can resonate beyond one league, one audience, or even one sport. And here's the key detail: they're accelerating all of this before the 2026 WNBA season even begins. She's not actively playing, yet resources are already being poured into amplifying her visibility. That's not reactive marketing, that's forward planning. It's an investment in where they believe she's headed, not just recognition of what she's already done. There are also whispers of a Netflix docuseries centered around Clark, a behind-the-scenes, access-driven format that follows her through a season. That style of storytelling has proven powerful in sports. It draws in viewers who might not normally tune into games and converts them into fans by connecting them to the person behind the jersey. For someone like Clark, on whose background, demeanor, and rapid rise are already compelling, that kind of platform could expand her reach even further. The ripple effect doesn't stop with her. The entire Indiana Fever roster is experiencing the shift. Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham. They're playing in front of larger crowds than the franchise has ever seen. National media coverage has surged, and they're entering a league backed by a $2.2 billion media rights deal. The 2026 season is lining up to be the most commercially impactful year in WNBA history, and at the center of that momentum, Aja's the same player who just sat front row at PRADA and signaling that her influence now stretches well beyond the court. None of this is random. When an individual athlete's brand reaches a certain level, the impact doesn't stop with them. It lifts everything attached to them. In Indiana's case, ticket sales have surged. Merchandise is moving faster. TV ratings are climbing. That momentum traces back to what Caitlin Clark has built beyond the hardwood. That's uncommon. Most stars raise their own profile. Clark is elevating an entire franchise and arguably pushing the whole league forward with her, and Angel Reese is seeing it unfold in real time. She's watching Nike pour energy and long-term strategy into Clark's signature line, while reports suggest Reebok is scaling back on hers. She's watching the distance between them widen, not just in endorsement dollars, but in visibility, influence, and overall brand strength. And here's the hard truth. Brand equity isn't something you can debate your way into. The market decides. Consumers decide. Right now, the signals are loud. Nike's commitment to Clark goes far beyond footwear. This is a long-range play to position her among the most recognizable athletes globally. The 2026 WNBA season hasn't even tipped off yet, and she's already dominating headlines. There's still nuance to unpack around Eileen Gu's past controversy, and that debate adds another dimension to the Milan storyline. But zoom out and look at the broader picture. Clark reportedly generated an estimated $8.1 million in endorsements during her rookie season alone. As a rookie, Forbes described it as a shift in how female professional athletes are valued. If anything, that may be understating it. Nike isn't retreating. Wilson isn't hesitating. Gatorade isn't second-guessing. State Farm isn't pulling back. Every major partner in her portfolio appears to be leaning in even harder. Meanwhile, Reese is left navigating a very different narrative. Reebok is reassessing. The spotlight in Milan belonged to Clark. Seated beside an Olympic gold medalist, calm and composed, looking like she's exactly where she's meant to be. So now it comes down to you. Are you riding with Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. And click the video on your screen. We'll catch you there.